In this lecture, we're going to be looking at what is by far the most common and influential argument um, for segregated sporting categories for girls, and that is going to be the argument from fair play. So the first thing to think of is that, yeah, as I just said, the most common arguments here are based on a sense of fairness, and the idea is that it would be unfair to expect people dis with disadvantages to compete on a level playing field um, against people with advantages without any adjustments. Um, so this is the idea that we can think of similar examples. So if we had people of vastly different age categories, if we had a team of 10-year-olds playing against a team of 15-year-olds, we'd think this is unfair because um, there's a big advantage for the team of 15-year-olds based on um, innate advantages that they have, and so it would be unfair to expect the 10-year-olds to play against them. And that's just an example, but we can think of other examples maybe that could also apply here. So the philosopher Andrea Bianchi says that our sense of fair play here is going to be, and the motivation for this fair play argument that we're going to see is going to be rooted in what she calls the skill thesis. This is a principle that she gives that she suggests is what's an assumption that everybody's making, which is justifying the fair play argument. And so the skill thesis is the idea that a person's success in sports should be based solely on skill and not on unequal advantages or starting points between competitors. And so we can see this, skill thesis is present in a lot of people's attitudes to the way the sport should run. So, for example, if we think that there's an advantage that you can be gained through, for example, using performance enhancing drugs, those are things that the reason why we limit the use of drugs in sports is because it's going to make for an unequal advantage, and so that's not going to be something that should be allowed because it violates the skill thesis. Okay, cool. So thinking about what fair play demands then. So if there is a big disadvantage in natural capability or starting point, a common method for alleviating this is to form separate competition groups based on a characteristic that's relevant to the competition. So, for example, we see in sports like boxing or rowing, there's going to be weight classes. So, in rowing, you have lightweight rowing versus heavyweight rowing, and indeed you have various different weight categories in boxing competitions as well. And these are meant to be alleviating the advantages that would be there if there was no leveling of the playing field at all. Because if we had a straight up competition, lightweight boxers would likely be at a massive disadvantage against heavyweight boxers. And so it makes more sense to have another category where lightweight boxers fight against other lightweight boxers within a certain weight class limit. So based on this motivation for separate competition groups, we see that sex differences are characteristics that are relevant to sporting competitions, since we've seen that men tend to have biological advantages, which mean that they will predictably outperform women in sporting competitions. Again, this is going to be a question of whether this applies to boys and girls as much as it does to men and women, but that's going to be something I'm going to leave to you guys to figure out. So the conclusion of this argument is going to be then that fairness requires that we allow girls to compete in sporting competitions that exclude boys, because if we didn't, we would get a situation where boys would have a massive advantage due to biological differences, which would violate the skill thesis because there would be an unfair starting point